When I first heard that Marvel might be bringing back Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr. for Avengers Doomsday, I had one reaction: disappointment, not excitement. And it's not because I don't love Steve Rogers or Tony Stark. I do. In fact, they're two of the best characters the MCU has ever given us. But bringing them back now feels less like a creative move and more like a surrender. Let me explain why. At its peak, the Marvel Cinematic Universe was unstoppable. Every new movie felt like a step forward. We were watching a story that grew, evolved, and connected in exciting ways. But recently, many fans, myself included, have felt like Marvel's lost that magic. And now, it kind of seems like they're trying to fix that by going backward. When you bring back actors like Chris Evans and Robert Downey Jr., it sends a message that Marvel doesn't trust its new heroes or stories to carry the franchise. It's like the studios saying, "We don't believe people care about Shang-Chi, Moon Knight, or the Eternals, so let's just call the old team." And honestly, that's a problem. There's something almost disrespectful about it to the new characters who barely had the chance to shine. Shang-Chi was a great film. It introduced an interesting, relatable hero with a rich cultural background. Moon Knight explored darker psychological themes that made it stand out in the MCU. And Eternals, even if it wasn't perfect, aimed to introduce a totally new layer of mythology to this universe. Instead of building on any of that, Marvel seems to be saying, let's just replay our greatest hits. And that's what fans are calling nostalgia bait. Studios know that audiences will show up to see familiar faces and hear familiar lines. But the more they lean on that formula, the less memorable their new stories become. Now, let's talk specifically about Steve Rogers. Steve had one of the most complete, satisfying arcs in all of superhero storytelling. His journey from a scrappy soldier in The First Avenger to the conflicted leader in Civil War, to a man who finally earned his peace at the end of Endgame. It's perfect. It ends beautifully. We saw him live his full story, sacrifice everything, and then get the quiet life he deserved. Reopening that story, it risks making his entire ending weaker. I don't want to see him back in the 1940s, or living out some alternate timeline adventure. I don't want to revisit the past when the future of the MCU could be so exciting. And honestly, I think a lot of fans have already moved on. We accepted that Chris Evans, like Steve, had reached the end of his MCU journey. And that was okay. Characters don't have to last forever. That's what makes their stories meaningful. I think part of why this hits so hard is because fans truly respected Steve's ending. His trilogy, The First Avenger, The Winter Soldier, and Civil War, is some of Marvel's best work. And Endgame tied that up perfectly. So, when I hear about a plan that brings him back, it doesn't make me excited. It makes me nervous. Nervous that Marvel might cheapen everything they built before just to get a short-term reaction. Now, I'm not saying Avengers Doomsday will be bad. I'll always give Marvel credit where it's due. Even when a film misses, it's usually ambitious. But this idea of constantly recycling old heroes feels stale. What I want is trust in the new generation. I want to see what Shang-Chi does next. I want to see how the Eternals return after the Celestial cliffhanger. I want Moon Knight to have a real place in the Avengers. That's the future. That's what will make Marvel alive again, not replaying the same emotional beats from 10 years ago. Marvel changed cinema because it made audiences care about characters they didn't know. Iron Man was a B-list Marvel hero before 2008. The studio took a gamble, and it worked because they believed in storytelling over star power. Now they're in the same position again. They have the chance to build something fresh. But going back to the old heroes, that just feels like they've lost confidence in their own creativity. So yeah, if Doomsday ends up being full of cameos from retired characters, I'll probably watch it, but out of curiosity, not excitement. Because if the MCU wants to move forward, it can't keep looking backward. Steve Rogers doesn't need another chapter. His story already ended perfectly. And with the end of this video, I want to ask a simple question. Is Marvel honoring its legacy or hiding behind it?